And look at some of the people, one of the major people that fund these progressive organizations. George Soros, Zionist oligarch billionaire. Who was someone that put tens of millions into the Vote for Trump campaign? Sheldon Adelson, Zionist oligarch billionaire. Does anyone really think, in their terminal naivety, that those two people don't ultimately answer to the same masters? So why would you have massive funding of progressive movements and massive funding supporting someone the progressives demonize for president? We come back to where we started: divide and rule. George Soros and his Open Society foundations and all the networks that go out from them was majorly involved in triggering the Arab Spring, which was presented by the fake news media as a spontaneous people's revolution in the Arab world. It was just a front to allow Western, not least American and British, funded, armed, trained rebels, mercenaries, to start a proxy war by America and the UK and other NATO countries against targets in the Middle East like Gaddafi and Assad. But they said, oh no, it's a people's revolution. It's just a front for a proxy war. Because if you keep invading countries over and over again, openly, like in Iraq, then people are going to go, what's going on? So you sell it as a people's revolution. And quite a few months ago now, there was something in Washington, D.C. called Democracy Spring, where progressives went to Washington to protest about billionaires and their influence in politics, as if their poster boy, Barack Obama, wasn't funded massively to record-breaking degrees at the time by the same people. And another irony, a number of the organizations that took part in Democracy Spring are funded by George Soros, a Zionist oligarch billionaire who does springs rather well, it seems. What you have is people of a certain persuasion, say the right. They get their information from the right-wing press and what's become known as the alt-right. And then you get people of a progressive persuasion, and they get their information from the left-wing press, or the so-called liberal press, or the progressive press. And just as in politics and political parties, left, right, centre, whoops, controlled by the same people, so are the left-wing press and so are the right-wing press. They're just different masks, once again, on the same face. So all these groups within politics, whether it's the right or progressives or centre, they're all getting their information about the world basically from the same sources. And the only literal alternative to that is going to the genuine alternative media that's dismantling the system in people's minds by exposing what it is, and not taking a left-right position within the system of control. And that's why they're targeting the genuine alternative media now through these fake news, anything but alternative websites, and through those who've taken a political position in the Trump election. And there's something that's a term that's come to be used more and more now. It's called identity politics. And it's time for all persuasions in the political spectrum and those in the alternative media that are not, in my view, very alternative, to grow up and to stop playing this identity political game that's allowing the few to dictate to the many, incessantly, ongoing. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I'm gay, okay, I'm gay, not me, but I'm talking about this gay identity. There's lots of gay people who are not like this, but there is a gay mentality that looks at politics from a gay perspective. What about gays? Because their identity is that they're gay. Then you have transgender identity politics, which is all under this progressive wing. And then you have Jewish, Muslim, Christian identity politics, which says I'm this is my label, so I'm going to vote from a position that best suits my identity. It's the politics of me. Identity politics. First of all, that is a godsend to anyone who wants to divide and rule. But it also means that simple things like what is fair, what is just, what is right by all people just go missing. Questions like that. What is the fair thing to do here? Not what is the best thing to do for my identity and my identity politics. What is the fair thing to do here in this situation? What is the just thing to do in this situation? And there's another part of this identity politics, which is money. What's the fair thing to do? What's the just thing to do in terms of the financial system? It's that no one is without a home, no one is hungry, and no one is allowed to fall below a certain basic level of life. But what does identity politics do in terms of the finance? It says, which one will make me more money than I already have, and I have more than I could spend in 100 lifetimes? All this identity stuff. All this me, what's in it for me, what will they do for me, has made us lose perspective of those simple things, those simple foundations of making judgments and introducing changes. What is fair, what is just, for all people concerned. You know, when I talk about progressives of the left, there are still some genuine people there that do come from that perspective and do value things like freedom of speech, freedom of expression. Because when we come back to this definition of fascism, liberal and progressive, but particularly when we come back to this definition of fascism, that's what political correctness is. It's the arrogant belief that you can dictate what people can say, even eventually what they can think, because you're right, and therefore anyone who has a different opinion must be wrong. There's no such thing as a different opinion to a progressive of this extreme nature, because they're right. Therefore, you've got a different opinion, you must be wrong, and because you've got a different opinion and you're wrong, what value is there in allowing you to speak? It's fascism. It's manipulation of the population, the target population, to silence itself, so those manipulating the target population don't have to. And the great drivers of this politically correct fascism, this destruction and deletion of basic freedom of thought, freedom of speech and expression, the so-called progressives. Oh, I'm so kind, look at me. All it is George Orwell's 1984 Newspeak. All those decades ago, he predicted this. And here's the progressives who are actually behind it. They're behind the hoax of global warming. So no one can have another view exposing that, otherwise they have to be silenced. And you know, progressives of this kind, and my God, they're growing. Do you know who put Trump in power? You did. You know who won the Brexit vote that you didn't want to go the way it did? You did. Do you know what's driving people into into parties that are against immigration in Europe of the scale that's happening? You are. And I'll tell you why. Because you are the new establishment, the new authority, you have made it impossible, increasingly impossible anyway, not quite, try it with me, for people to express how they feel. If what happened with Trump, as I said in a recent video cast, it was a primal scream for help from vast numbers of people who knew Clinton was business as usual, and they just hoped that maybe Trump wasn't. It's a vain hope, but that's where they were coming from. And you know why? Because they have not had a voice. They've not been able to express what's happening to them economically, what's happening to their families, what's happening to their communities. Because you, progressives, won't even let them articulate themselves. Why? Because you don't debate anymore, because you've got nothing to debate with. You are vacuous in your evidence that you put forward to support what you're imposing on everyone else. Instead of debate, what we have are abuse and slogans. You vote for Trump, you are by definition a racist, you're homophobic, you're anti-transgender. What, everybody? If you vote to come out of the fascist, communist, bureaucratic dictatorship called the European Union, you are racist, homophobic, anti-transgender. This is what's gone on. And if you're concerned about vast numbers of people coming from the Middle East and North Africa and changing the nature of your community, you cannot speak out about that. Why? Because you are racist. Oh, and I bet if you're racist, you're also homophobic and anti-transgender. This is the fascist dictatorship of the so-called progressives that has led to where we are now. And you, ironically, are out on the streets protesting about it through organizations funded by George Soros, protesting about what you have created. So I say to the still genuine people of what is called the left, people who are genuinely liberal, you have to, if we're going to change this, take the meaning of what you stand for back from these fascist progressives and dictators who daily serve the very system they say they. I'll say this to the genuine alternative media, and there are many in that, where the best journalism on the planet goes on currently. We need to take back the alternative media really means and what it was created for. Not to take political positions within the system that we're exposing, and certainly not to put out clickbait headlines that add to the advertising revenue and produce stories written by named writers who don't exist. We can't look the other way for that stuff anymore. And perhaps, as the truth dawns about Donald Trump, increasingly fast to his supporters, and even now, I'm sure, former supporters, some of them, we need to go to the next stage of this awakening. Brexit, voting for the perception of what people thought Trump was, is evidence that more and more people are sick and tired of being dictated to by this system. But we need to go to the next stage of this awakening and realize that the political system is not the way to do it. Ceasing en masse to cooperate with our own enslavement is the way to do it, outside the political nonsense and irrelevance in the governments of the world. Because whether you are left or whether you are Barack Obama and Donald Trump are not messiahs of change. They are simply different divides in the same rule.